Thank you, Saket. This afternoon, I will be presenting some information on the National Conservation Practice Standard for Closure of Waste Facilities, also referred to as Code 360 from the Natural Resources Conservation Service. There are 3 handouts that are on the website for this presentation that are useful resources. The NRCS has developed numerous conservation practice standards. These contain information on why and where practices are applied and set forth the minimum quality criteria that must be met during the application of the practices in order for it to achieve its intended purpose. There are both national and state conservation practice standards. Today we will be focused on the national standard. However, if you are going to be applying the practice in your state, you need to also look at the state-specific standard. As a resource, I've included, next slide, please. As a resource, I have included 2 handouts on how to electronically access both the national and state conservation practice standards. The National Conservation Practice Standards are found in the National Handbook of Conservation Practices, and they are subject to review and comment through the Federal Register, and those are typically posted for 30 days. And there's 2 different options in the handout on how to access those through the Federal Register website. The third handout, if you will go to slide 3, is the current National Conservation Practice Standard dated April 2011. Since this was recently updated, the standard may not have been revised for many of the states to reflect the current national standard. Typically, it takes about 1 year for each state to update the standard to include any local or state requirements. Okay, next slide. The first portion of the standard is the definition. The definition will be the same for both state and national once they're updated, and it addresses the removal and closure of a waste facility. Specifically, it is defined as the decommissioning of facilities and or the rehabilitation of contaminated soil in an environmentally safe manner where agricultural waste has been handled, treated, and or stored and is no longer used for the intended purpose. Next slide. Like the definition, the purpose should remain the same as states adopt and revise the national standard. The purpose is to protect the quality of surface water and groundwater resources, mitigate air emissions, eliminate safety hazard for humans and livestock, and safeguard the public health through the closure of that facility. Next slide. There are several other sections in the standard that are typical in all NRCS conservation practice standards. In this case, the practice will apply to an animal feeding operation or site that previously had an animal feeding operation or other agricultural waste storage facility. There are some criteria, a few of which I will discuss in a little bit greater detail. Some considerations, plans and specifications, operation and maintenance. Finally, the references section includes some resources that may be used in developing the standard or closing the waste storage facility. Next slide, please. The criteria include information and requirements which must be followed in order to meet the standard. Here I've listed some of the criteria. Removing the pipes and pumps and other conveyance systems, the erosion and pollution control, proper removal of liquid slurry and sludge, some options for closure, decommissioning liquid waste tanks, concrete or metal, as examples of the types of tanks that we might see, and the dry waste storage facilities. If you look at the bottom of page 2 of the standard and the top beginning of page 3, there are some actual specific sampling requirements for the animal holding areas upon closing a facility, and also for dry waste storage facilities. Next slide. The consideration section includes items that might be looked at or considered when closing a facility. These include some recommendations on certain cases where additional items are needed to achieve the purpose of the standard and prevent unforeseen situations, such as the need for possible crop testing to protect grazing livestock from nutrients that have built up too high in the material. Next slide. The closure standard also identifies information that is needed for the plans and specifications. Details for these may be found on page 3 and 4 of the standard. This includes the bulk of the engineering work used for the closure of the facility. Many of these are also related to safety. Additionally, a stormwater pollution prevention plan and associated permits may be required depending upon the site and how much land area is being disturbed. The last item that we'll be discussing is the operation and maintenance following the closure. While typically this would be very minimal, there is a chance that there might be some shrinkage after the earth fill is placed, and so additional earth fill would need to be added, or if it's been converted to a freshwater pond, there may be a need for some water quality sampling to make sure that it is adequate for its final use. Next slide. Thank you all for your time and attention, and I will look forward to visiting with you shortly on some other topics. I'll turn it back over to Saqib at this time.